Well, Shabbat Shalom. This is Barbara, and I'm serving as your host today, and Brother Pete is here as your co-host. Well, many of you know that I have a Seventh-day Adventist background, and many of us here on this conference call do. Some don't, but this video was found on the YouTube out there on the internet by this pastor. And so we are doing a rebuttal today to defend the Lunar Sabbath. Okay, so the title is that this pastor is asking, a Seventh-day Adventist pastor is asking, is the Sabbath the seventh day of the month or the seventh day of the week? And this SDA pastor, he's from Power of the Lamb, Pastor Ivor Myers, and this is what the video looks like if you hunt for it, and I'll leave the link below, but I pretty much covered everything that he stated in here. So he says, nowhere in the Bible is the Sabbath found as the seventh day of the month. And Brother P is going to be doing the quotes from Pastor Myers. And so we want to be very respectful of him, but we are presenting the rebuttal to his objections.
The SDA pastor asks a question. Is the Sabbath a salvation issue?
Okay, and I'm going to represent the Lunar Sabbath people. Well, it says in John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. And in Revelation 14:1 and 14:12, it starts out in 14:1 saying, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on their foreheads. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus, or I would say Yeshua, but I'm trying to read this to the pastor in the way that he would be reading the names.
The pastor asks, do we need to figure out the motions of the moon to figure when Sabbath is?
Well, Isaiah 66:22-23 says, for as the new heavens and the new earth which I will make shall remain before me, saith Yah, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from new moon to new moon, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. So the seventh day.
The pastor's objection. Leviticus 23:3, seventh day Sabbath. Is it on the seventh day of the month or the seventh day of the week? The pastor reads Leviticus 23:3. 6 days shall your work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings.
Well, Leviticus 23:3 says, and Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feast. 6 days shall be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. These are the feasts of Yah, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. So we did a video about this too. Is the weekly seventh-day Sabbath a feast listed in Leviticus 23? And I'll leave all these links below of these videos that we've already done concerning many of these topics. So the Bible does not present two different timekeeping systems. Scripture presents only one. The lunar solar calendar by which the annual feast as well as the seventh-day Sabbath are to be calculated. Leviticus 23 lists the holy feast of Yah, including the weekly Sabbath. And Yah said, "These are my feasts forever."
SDA pastor states, so in order for us to even entertain a discussion of the Sabbath being lunar, you would have to produce a verse that states the seventh day of the month, referring to the Sabbath.
Okay, well, remember Exodus 28:3-11 says, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yah made the heaven and earth, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." And this talks about the seventh day of the week. And we know the pastor is wanting to know if it's the seventh day of the month.
The SDA pastor states, the seventh day Sabbath is the seventh day of the week, not of the month, not of the moon, and not of the month, excuse me.
Okay, well, whose week are you using, Pastor? And which calendar are you using? And this is another video we just did, the Gregorian calendar versus the biblical calendar, talking about all the pagan days of the weeks and the pagan days of the months and how it was created. And this is just a little bit of our history. The Julian Roman calendar that was in effect at the time of Yeshua was an 8-day week, and it had letters from A through H. And we know that Yeshua, Jesus, did not use the 8-day calendar week. He used the calendar of Israel. But anyways, it all happened in 1582 that Pope Gregory XIII created a Gregorian calendar, and it is only at this time 441 years old. And we thought it went all the way back to creation. And Pastor, I know that you thought it went back to creation because that's what we were taught as Seventh-day Adventists. Well, Saturday is only the seventh day of the week by virtue of Emperor Constantine in 321 A.D. He venerated the day of the sun, which moves Saturday from its coveted position as the first day of the week to the seventh day of the week. And you can see in this illustration here, Saturn Day was day 1, Sunday day 2, but Constantine put Sunday, and we know this, we learned this in church school and college, that 321 A.D., the first Sunday law when Constantine venerated the day of the sun. Well, what they did not teach us is that is when they moved Saturn from day 1 to day 7 so that the Jews could still have a seventh-day Sabbath because they were forced to use this calendar. And also, Jewish writings prove the lunar Sabbath. This is a quote over here on the right from the Jewish Encyclopedia, Holidays, page 410. Sabbath and new moon, both periodically recurring in the course of the year. The new moon is still, and the Sabbath originally was dependent upon the lunar cycle. And so down here, I'm just going to read, it's amazing that these confessions come straight from the Jewish Encyclopedia, and it specifically says that the Sabbath was originally by the phases of the moon, and it was not a fixed day like it is today. The Jews actually admit the Sabbath was never a continuous weekly cycle, and they tell you out in the open that the Sabbath was originally by the phases of the moon. Another thing, Pastor, you're a pastor from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, you might be interested in knowing that the Adventist Research Committee in 1938 and 1995 found that the lunar Sabbath was the true Sabbath of the Bible, and both Adventist committees were told to keep silent when they did these researches, and they had these committees, because if they should report the truth of the lunar calendar, that the biblical week does not have a continuous weekly cycle, it would be discovered that it certainly does not align with Saturday on the modern weekly cycle. The truth is that Pastor Saturday is on a Roman papal Gregorian calendar, and it is not the Sabbath of the Bible. And we did this video also on the left, proving it. And here's a wonderful quote from Ellen White, and she is very well respected in Adventist circles. And this is from Early Writings, page 33. At the commencement of the time of trouble, we were filled with the Holy Ghost as we went forth and proclaimed the Sabbath more fully. This enraged the churches and nominal Adventists, as they could not refute the Sabbath truth.
Pastor asked, when was the first new moon? The pastor asked, if I were to ask you a question, when was the literal first new moon? Your answer would be, well, the first new moon ever would have been on the fourth day of creation. The very first new moon was on the fourth day of the week. The pastor reads Genesis 1:14 through 19. And God, Yahweh, said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day. The pastor continues. So what does that mean? What does that tell us? The first Sabbath was on the seventh day, not of the month, but of the week. But if you're counting by the new moon, then the very first Sabbath would have been on the third day of the new month, not on the seventh day of the month. What this does, it would throw off the whole calculation of the seventh day. Sabbath being on the seventh day of the month, or after the new moon, however you choose to phrase it, it throws that whole math off.
Okay, well, Pastor, I have a question. Why would the Creator create a week without creating a month to put it into? And this is what creation week looks like. You have New Moon Day as day 1. You have 6 working days or 6 creation days, and then a 7th-day Sabbath. So we have done several videos about this. This is one. Was the moon really created on the 4th day? Here's another one. When was the moon created? But could there be 2 first days in Genesis chapter 1? One specifically mentioned and one concealed. We know there is the first day of the work week, which is specifically mentioned as first day in Genesis 1:5, during which light was brought forth. But what about when the heavens and earth were created in Genesis 1:1? Was that a separate space, time, and event? Could that be a concealed first day, not of the week, but of the month? Must the week and month start at the same time? Well, let's explore question of whether the creation of heavens and earth in Genesis 1:1 and the creation of light, Genesis 1:5, are the same or different space, time, and events occurring on different days. And let's look at the words create and made They are two different Hebrew words. And what escapes most Christians' understanding is that in Genesis 1:14-16 tells us that the sun, moon, and stars were made, and that's Asah, Strong's number 6213. So the sun, moon, and stars were made or appointed on day 4, not created. Created is Bara, Strong's 1254. And in this sense, is created as in no prior existence. So Asah can carry the meaning of advanced upon or appointed. And Yah made, or Asah, 6213, as appointed the sun, moon, and stars for his keeping purposes. And that is what happened on the 4th day. On the 4th day, they were appointed. And this is another video we did on this topic, just specifically about these two words.
Pastor states feasts are calculated by the moon. The feasts in Leviticus 23 are listed as days of the month. Passover, the 14th day of the month. Unleavened bread, the 15th day of the month. Day of Atonement, the 10th day of the month. Tabernacles, the 15th of the month. Pastor points out that the days of the month are always calculated by the moon.
Okay, well, Leviticus 23, 1-44 is where you find all the feasts of Yah. And so we'll just read the first 4 verses. And Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of Yah, or the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations. Even these are my feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. These are the feasts of the Lord, even the holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. So Sabbath is listed there as a feast before the other feasts are listed.
Pastor states, I want you to notice the Bible lists these feast days that are basically calculated by the moon, by the lunar cycles. So it says here, in the 14th day of the first month, you can translate that word month as moon. So in the first 14th day of the first moon or month, if you will, at the evening, that evening shall be the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th of the same month, or on the 15th day of the month, is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. I am not saying that there's no such thing as a lunar Sabbath. What we're saying is the lunar Sabbaths were Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, Day of Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles, feast, trumpets, etc. These are the lunar Sabbaths. They were based upon the moon. The Sabbath has no such description connected to it.
Okay, well, we know that Yeshua was the Passover lamb. We're talking here about the Passover being in a month. So which day was Yeshua, Jesus, resting in the grave? He rested on the Sabbath, the 15th of the month. It was the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the day that he rested. It was the first day of that feast, the 15th. And he rested on the Sabbath, the 7th day of the week.
The pastor states, so in order for us to even entertain the discussion of the Sabbath being lunar, you would have to produce a verse that states the 7th day of the month referring to the Sabbath.
Okay, well, let's review a little bit about the spring feast days, Leviticus 23, 5-6. In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. So John 19 says, and it was the preparation of the Passover, in about the 6th hour. And he saith unto the Jews, this is Pilate, behold your king. But they cried out, away with him, crucify him. And Pilate said unto them, shall I crucify your king? And the chief priests answered, we have no king but Caesar. Then delivered he him therefore unto them to be crucified. And they took Jesus and led him away. And he, bearing his cross, went forth into a place called the place of the skull, which is called in the Hebrew Golgotha, where they crucified him and 2 others with him on either side, and Jesus, Yeshua, was in the midst. So actually, we know now this happened on Preparation Day, the 14th day of the month. And John 19 continues, when Yeshua, Jesus, therefore had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished, and bowed his head and gave up the ghost. So the Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day. So this text proves a weekly Sabbath was on the 15th day of a month. It was the 2nd Sabbath of the month, and it was the 7th day of the week. So, Pastor, we have a Sabbath that has a day of a month. It has the day of the 15th day of the month, and it is also the 7th day of a week. In Mark 16 also says, and when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome had brought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. And very early in the morning, the 1st day of the week, they came into the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. Okay, here we see the 1st day of the week. Here's your Passover, the 14th. Here's your first Sabbath, unleavened bread. And here's the 1st day of the week. They came to anoint Yeshua on the 1st day of the week. Therefore, the Sabbath was the 7th day of the week. And it was also a day of the month. This shows the Sabbath as a day of a month. It was the 15th day of the 1st month. And as being Adventists, whenever we showed someone about Sabbath, we always showed them that Jesus died on Friday, he rested on Sabbath, and he was resurrected on Sunday. That's what we always said. But now we have learned about the feast days. So he died on a preparation day, the 14th. He rested on a Sabbath that was the 15th. And he rose the 16th, the 1st day of the week. And okay, here's more. Luke 23. This man went unto Pilate, we're talking about Joseph of Arimathea, and he begged the body of Yeshua. And he took it down and wrapped it in linen and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. And the women also, which came with him from Galilee, followed after, and beheld the sepulchre and how his body was laid. And they returned and prepared spices and ointments and rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. Okay, so this was the preparation day for the Sabbath. The Sabbath drew on. It was also the 14th day of the month, because Passover is always on the 14th day of the month. It is always the 6th day of the week. Okay, so they rested on the Sabbath, which was the 15th day of the month. It was the 7th day of the 7th week, and this text shows the Sabbath placed on a day of the month and the week.
The pastor points out that the day of the month are always calculated by the moon. Review of the pastor's challenge. So in order for us to even entertain the discussion of the Sabbath being lunar, you would have to produce a verse that states the seventh day of the month, referring to the Sabbath.
Okay, Pastor, and I believe that we have shown much evidence showing the Sabbath as the day of the month. It was the 15th day of the month when Yeshua was crucified, and when he slept in the grave on the 15th on the Sabbath. So why would the Creator create a week with a seventh-day Sabbath without creating a month to put it into? The Sabbath is the seventh day of the week, and it's always the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th days of the month. And the Sabbath is a sign between Yah and his people. That's what it says in Ezekiel 20. In Malachi 3:6, Yah says, I am Yahweh, I change not. And then Ezekiel 20, of course, here it is, moreover, I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am Yahweh that sanctifies them. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Walk in my statutes, keep my judgments and do them, and hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am Yahweh, your Elohim. And Psalms 89:37 says it will be established forever like the moon, the faithful witness in the sky. And Psalms 19 says, day unto day utter speech, and night unto night shows knowledge. So for more information showing the Sabbath and showing the Gregorian calendar and all the calendar man-made changes, showing the Creator's lunar solar calendar, please go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com. And so I invite you to like if this was a blessing to you, and share it with your friends that love Yeshua.